The Jim and Terry Show, only it is the Jim-less Terry Show. That's the Terry without Jim. My good friend is not able to be with me in the Hobbit Hole studio this morning, so the conversation is my left brain talking to my right brain, my angel talking to my demon on my shoulder being my conscience, and talking about things that really just, don't add up. Math was never exactly my strong point, and I later came to embrace mathematics as almost like an art form. And once you understood the way colors blend in the color theory, the way equations blend in equations, linear equations, and once you got into the theories of numbers, it started to make a little more sense. Not that I'll ever be an astrophysicist, not that I'll ever be a Neil deGrasse Tyson, although I do admire Neil deGrasse Tyson and his work against, what shall I call it? Magical thinking. When conspiracy theories and QAnon and all kinds of stuff add up to a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense. The logical mind cannot apprehend these things, and there is what we called in our last podcast together with my good friend Jim, is cognitive dissonance, when you can't put these things together because they don't fit together. It's like there's a piece of the puzzle missing, and you try to jam one that you found from another set into something and make it work for you, even though the colors don't fit, the shape doesn't fit, the shapes of the grooves don't fit, nothing fits, but you insist, nothing wrong here, it makes perfect sense. Well, that is what I would call the God of the Gaps theory, where you can make anything be anything in possibility, potentiality, just because science has not explained it yet. Or the other claim, which is, of course, equally misrepresentative of what science is. Science is a methodology. It is not an ism. And I don't think it claims to be an ism. It is just a methodology for getting knowledge of what our universe is all about. And that happens to be in the realm of the measurable, the quantifiable, the falsifiable. And that's all we have. And it is that pursuit that has rocked the faith world. When science can explain things that were apprehended through sacred text for thousands of years, and suddenly we understand the rainbow. One of my favorite books that got me on the journey of deconstruction is Unweaving the Rainbow. And that leads to all kinds of other conclusions. And of course, I've got a mountain of books on logical thinking, of logical fallacies, of things that don't make sense and why people continue to believe things that don't make sense. And it is a wonder why we don't, at this point, still burn people we believe to be witches at stakes or throw them into the river with rocks, hoping that if they're innocent, they will float. What? In what realm of logic does this make sense? But it doesn't, because it's in a worldview and a time in developing human thought when belief was not rooted in anything but fanciful thinking. In hearsay, in certain groups of people being empowered to hold sway over other people. Classism, class structure, the wealthy have it, the poor do not. If you're a wealthy person in medieval England, your firstborn usually goes into the military, your secondborn goes into the Catholic Church, and that's how you get wealth and maintain wealth in your family. You entrench it. Well, those kinds of ways of thinking and perceiving do not hold sway in an egalitarian society. After the French Revolution, after the Magna Carta, after the American Revolution, after things like the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada, after the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, after fraternity, égalité in the French Revolution of brotherhood and equality, these things become enshrined. And when the Enlightenment comes along and enshrines logic and reason over magical thinking, things really start to cook up. Cook up in terms of literally science taking charge of things like the steam engine, the Industrial Revolution. You might have an argument that, well, science brings things that we don't want too, like pollution, like burning coal, burning fossil fuels, and you are right. But as a methodology, it is science that has got us to where we are. If you're enjoying your fancy home appliances, that is science. If you're enjoying your flat-top stove in the kitchen, that is brought to you by science. There are so many things that we have learned as we pursued human experience in space, off the planet. Talk about being ungrounded. Yes, we're venturing to places to boldly go where no man can go before. Beam me up, Scotty. Yes, it is science that has taken us there, not magical thinking. No matter how much you appreciate yoga gurus, Dalai Lamas, and teachings of Hinduism, Shintoism, Buddhism, and all the other isms, including, should I put Christianity as an ism? Why not? Mormonism. Why not? Put these things all together under isms. But I do want to challenge the notion of science being an ism. Yes, it may be pursued rather aggressively and perhaps a little over the top by some. But that doesn't make science at its core. The methodology, the scientific method, the Sir Francis Bacon of, Bacon, broke a lot of religious hearts and minds and possibly souls along the way as science started to explain things, including viruses, bacteria, infections, the importance of boiling water, Louis Pasteur, the first wartime use of penicillin to prevent infections and save soldiers on the verge of losing limbs for gangrene. It's amazing. War is often the impetus for scientific breakthrough, including prosthetics, including ways of managing the broken minds and spirits of soldiers returning from unimaginable horrors in war fronts. And yet war still continues, and a lot of wars have religious base. And I always tell my good friend Jim, one of the turning points for me was studying history of World War I and going over Lutheran and Anglican sermons for contrast and realizing that there is no contrast. They were saying the same things from the pulpits. God is on our side. There's a great Michel song called If God is on Your Side, and I guess the unspoken parenthetical is, then who's on mine? And if you're on the fundamental right, the answer is God isn't on your side. You're going to hell. And goodness knows how many times I've been told that. And yet, morality and all the things that we see and observe does not depend on the existence of an almighty. It depends on the goodness of the human heart and your desire to do something better, to try something different, to learn to do good, for goodness sake, as opposed to, well, God told me I got to do it, so I better do it. Yeah, the Bible told me so. These kinds of things are just default positions, part of the God of the gaps. We don't explain it. We can't explain it at this point. Doesn't mean science will never be able to explain it. We might. And I remember the argument being the human eye being so complex it could not possibly develop through the process of evolutionary small changes over time, lots of time. Or evolution itself. We still have flat earthers, young earthers, who still believe that this stuff is what they have to do to reconcile the Bible with science. No, you need to get rid of the stuff that doesn't make sense. One of my favorite political targets is Tucker Carlson. He tries to go at this Charlie Kirk stuff. He wants to be an articulate spokesperson for the cause of fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism. It doesn't work very well. Check it out. Professor Dave Explains. Jim and Terry Show signing off. Bye-bye.